Joe Pane, Tom Hitchcock, how are you?
I'm very well, Tom. How are you?
Not too bad. You're looking very studious there. Studious.
Indeed.
I think I need another coffee. So, listen, you and I don't know each other, as is quite common in these episodes. So, the episode, I don't know your story. I don't know where you're going to be going, but that's where the excitement is, really. So, yeah, but it's over to you, Joe. Tell us a bit about yourself.
So briefly, I've got a psychology, sociology background. I've been running my own coaching and training and consultancy business, specializing in emotional fitness for the last 19 years. Married 27 years, 16-year-old twin boys, 8-time marathoner. That's my summary. Done.
Okay. All right. Well, podcast over. Now, we'll unpack a bit of that. So listen, I'm curious as to the marathons, first of all. So you've done a few marathons that you were sort of habitual runner anyway.
Yeah, I've been running for the last 25, 30 years. So it's one of the things I love that brings me great joy. So yeah, it's brought me around the world. I get to run at different events and have a phenomenal, community of people locally that I get to connect with on something that's, of a common interest. It's fantastic.
Why do you enjoy it?
I don't know why. It's like anything in life, why do we go and play the guitar? It's because it feels good, because it brings us joy. I think, and that's an element of the work that I do in the realm of emotional fitness is that, to build our relationship with uncertainty, which is what emotional fitness focuses on, is an aspect of that is you've got to find activities that bring you joy, because when you've got a hobby that sings to your soul, literally, and something you can perform consistently multiple times a week, it actually gives you something to look forward to. So when you're actually navigating that spot fire or that really difficult day, you've got something in the back of your mind that evening, the next morning, that activity's coming up, that run with that group's coming up, and it feels good to think about that whilst you're navigating a difficult situation. And that's one of the many strategies that I teach around how we can, continually transform our relationship with uncertainty.
Yes, and obviously it goes without saying that COVID was the epitome of uncertainty in the macro sense. And when we went into that, people didn't know the extent of it, how long it's going to be, what the effects is going to be on them and their personal and professional lives. And that was pretty much worldwide, with a few minor exceptions, So I think using the positives from that is we can then look at the myriad of other uncertainties. And I think
Absolutely.
it's one of those only certainties. It's
Yeah. Yeah.
uncertainties.
Well, uncertainty is, we need to realize that uncertainty is the fabric of life, because without uncertainty, we can't grow. Anytime we've experienced something difficult, whether it was the COVID or whether it was a life crisis point or something that's happened in our life that we find difficult, it's because of those hard moments or those uncertainty based experiences that we get to grow. Nothing in the universe, nature, markets, economies, relationships, nothing grows without some kind of flavor of uncertainty, whether it's pressure, challenge, adventures, whether it's a crisis. All of these things are needed in order to grow. I mean, someone said to me a long time ago that everything in nature um, grows when it meets an obstacle. It needs obstacles in order to grow. So we don't like it, but and that's another part of the philosophy of emotional fitness is where you can become a conscious inviter of uncertainty rather than waiting for life to bring you drama. Well, why don't you embrace life and consciously choose some challenging activities that you can do that it can actually help you grow so you can get to that next. When I say get to that next level, I mean, as we grow through our 20s, 30s, 40s, and so on, life responsibilities expand and we need to become more in order to match the demands of the next level that our life brings.
Yeah, I think so. And I think changing our relationship with the uncertainties and being able to embrace them for the lessons they're going to teach us and what have you, would definitely make them more palatable and the lessons more permanent. Okay. Do you think there's also arguably a case to cultivate chaos?
Well, that's what I've never used the term cultivating chaos before, but I guess it's another way of saying being a conscious inviter of uncertainty. So chaos is a different word. Chaos presupposes out of control, which most of life is anyway. Um, But tell me about what you mean by cultivating chaos. When you say those words, what are you thinking?
Yes. So maybe chaos was potentially the wrong choice of words. I was just being a bit poetic there. Um, but probably more cultivating the uncertainties. So it's one thing to welcome them. So, okay, when they come, here you are, didn't see you coming. Let's take it on. Let's learn. Let's move. Let's grow. And there's also a case of, but you know what? I'm going looking for it.
Yes. Yes, and that's a big part of what I was just sharing there is that so for example, we briefly talked about running. I mean, the first marathon I ever did, 42-kilometer run, first one ever, I was as scared as all heck. I had to access everything within me to even just prepare for it, rock up to it. I remember not sleeping for nights heading into the event that week. Um, and there was a part of me that absolutely loved it because I knew on some level this was going to be good for me. And I'm not talking physically, sure, physically, but I'm talking mentally, spiritually, energetically, emotionally. And when you can consciously place yourself in positions where you don't know if you're going to get through, that's certainly better than being placed in those positions by life when you really don't know whether you're going to get through or not. So,
Yeah. So it's almost it's almost like a test environment, a safe environment to do so.
yeah, exactly.
Out of curiosity, and I'm taking it slightly sideways here. Have you ever done a London Marathon?
No, I haven't been to London before. So I really want to do that one day.
So I'm not much of a runner. So that I think it's like Marmite, you either love it or hate it. So I'm not much of a runner, but I did do the London Marathon. It's the only one I did. And,
Ah,
and I was thinking, well, I'll have a couple of little breaks. I'll walk when I need to, but I plan to run it all out of principle. And every time I felt like I should stop, I couldn't because what's unique about the London Marathon is they had people lying in the streets the whole marathon
yes.
rather than, just the end or tourist areas and that as well.
Yes,
So
and they yell at you if you stop.
yeah, that's it. Well, there was no stop. If anything, they were giving me sweets and whatever to keep going.
Love
And I
it.
was wearing a football kit, so I'd get a bit of banter for that as well. Okay, right, let's keep going. So one and only. But have
Well
you
done.
ever read a book called Born to Run?
I've actually got it in my library here. Yes, I haven't read it cover to cover.
Okay. All right. I highly recommend it because
Yep.
I haven't long since finished that book, and it kind of gave me a bit of an appetite for running again without being a runner, you know. But they talk a lot about these people in Mexico, these disconnected from civilization that can run for days and days and days for hundreds of kilometers without
Amazing,
breaking sweat.
amazing.
Um, and they do it for competitiveness, but for competition with their tribes, but um, but essentially it is part of how they live their life, and they do it barefoot across rocky terrain and that, and it's fascinating really because it talks about where they go when they're running. Okay, where their mind goes. It's a form of meditation, connection to the body, the earth, and
Yes.
everything else like that. Is that something that you can relate to? This or where I was leaning into when I asked why you like it.
Yeah. For me, it's the opposite. For me, when I'm in a race like a marathon, especially the last 12 Ks, um, I bring all my attention to now because all that matters. And without going to the cliches of the power of now, but just bringing it to now, it's like right now, how am I doing? Well, I'm still moving. I'm still running. I'm doing okay. Right now, how am I doing? It was a mantra, and that mantra kept me fully engaged in that moment. And it's funny how the time, the experience of time just changes when you do that. And that's what I found has worked well for me. So, um, yeah, I mean, everyone's got different approaches.
Well, essentially, that is partly the principle of meditation because the next thing you know, if you're focusing your mind and channeling it onto one thing, then time goes like that. And it puts you in that relaxed state. It puts you through a coping, it's all a coping mechanism to push you through barriers and pain and challenges.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, one of the aspects of emotional fitness, the emotional fitness formula, is emotional flexibility. And emotional flexibility is based on the fact that emotions don't respond to facts; they respond to our meaning or the perception that we give in the facts. So when I'm in a running race, as I'm there with the last 10 or 12 Ks, how I'm feeling emotionally, not physically, how I'm feeling emotionally, it's important to realize that we self create that by the meaning that we're giving the experience that we're having. So if I'm giving that experience the meaning of, oh my God, I've still got 12K to go, and then insert and add stories around that, I'm going to feel a certain way, versus the feeling it changes if the meaning or the focus point becomes, well, hold on, how you doing right now? Well, right now I'm doing fine. There's a water stop coming up here in another 500 meters. Fantastic, fantastic, love it. And it's just being in that moment, being in the moment, being in that moment. That changes the way I feel, because for that very fact of human behavior, that, as I just said, emotions don't respond to facts. They respond to the meaning that we're giving the facts or the situation that we find ourselves in. It's a fact that it's the 30th kilometer. It's a fact that there's 12 kilometers left. It's a fact that there's a water stop coming up right over here. It's a fact that you're still running. So the meaning that you put on that experience changes the emotional experience completely. And that's all. It's within reason. It's within your control.
I think I can relate to that. From my understanding there, obviously, this is coming from a non-runner who did run very slowly, admittedly, but I did run every step of the London Marathon.
And well done, by the way. Congratulations on that. That's a significant achievement.
Thank you very much. The meaning for me and the reason why I did it is I actually did it for a very, very small charity that helped a family member. And we raised about $7,000 for it. Obviously, it's a little bit less when it turned into pounds, but it looked good at first.
Yeah.
And I couldn't not finish it for that. So all those times where I really was like, you know what, I'm done, I'm spent, I really am. The 1 foot to the 1 foot, just keep going. It was exhausted. The meaning for me is what got me to cross the line.
Yes. There you go. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
okay, all right. So so sociology, psychology. I was studying similar things as well. I can't remember most of what I learned because I didn't go into anything that's practicing. You did, but you deliberately went into a particular flavour, a certain route. What was the catalyst for that?
So when I finished uni back in the mid 90s, my first job was as a rehabilitation counsellor at Ford Motor Company, where in Victoria in Australia, that's where they used to make this car called the Ford Falcon, which was back then was the biggest seller in Australia. And that job I got straight out of my degree because it was directly related to the work that I was doing at school. However, I found immediately that reality is very different to academia. So, in that I was in a manufacturing environment that had multiple agendas, union-driven agendas, insurance-based agendas, um, company-based agendas. It was a very complex, toxic environment. And so I spent my first 2 years of my career navigating through that with complete ignorance, confusion, and also when I say depression, I don't mean in the traditional sort of depression version of that, but I mean I was feeling as flat as a tack, because I spent 4 years at uni preparing for a career that I realized, well, this aspect of the career is not working for me. So 2 years in, I then decided I had to leave because it was just really, really affecting me. And I didn't know what to do. It was the first time I actually experienced being lost in my career path. And so I was talking with a fellow colleague of mine who shared an office with me, who was also a fellow rehabilitation counselor. And he had just sold his house. And he was speaking incredibly well of this agent that he dealt with and how phenomenal he was and all the things that this fellow did that went out of his way to help him and his partner. And I got him to put me in touch with his agent because I was curious to know where did he do his training, who does he work for? Long and the short of it is I exited rehab counseling without having a clue about where to go with my life. And I thought, well, while I figure that out, I'll go and work in sales and real estate. And I joined a local business that was run by father and son. And the first 15 months of that career path, I ended up spending 7 years there. The first 15 months, I had to door knock to build my database. Now, let me tell you, Tom, if you want to accelerate your relationship with uncertainty, go and cold call for a year and build a list. And you get to learn how to think in your feet. You'll discover aspects of yourself you didn't know existed. It is just a phenomenal journey, even though it wasn't phenomenal at the time. And that gave me some success in the following, 6 years after that. So 7 years in real estate. Then that became a bit monotonous and repetitive. And I took 15 months sabbatical. I went and did a teacher training diploma in meditation. I did 7-day silent retreats, vision quests, all kinds of things that took me away from people and into the forest and just sitting silently with groups of people I didn't know. And it was just an amazing 15 months that kind of I got to catch up on what life is really about. And I ran out of money and I had to go back to my old job, and my relationship with my old employer was fantastic, still is today, if I still talk to them, at times. So I got a job there again, but going back to where you don't belong is like trying to put the toothpaste back into the tube. It just doesn't go. So I ended up, that was a sparker that got me to start my consultancy and training business, which was back in February of 2006. So that was the background that led me to starting my own business. Coming out of a psychology degree, the last thing I would have thought about was starting my own business. All I was thinking was a career path, So that's the helicopter ride, very briefly over the top of 15 years worth of time that led me to starting my business 19 years ago.
I think that's fascinating. I also, when I was a young man, did some door knocking and what have you. But in the UK, so we had all the elements thrown at me.
Yeah.
I remember whenever I'd go to the door, the rain was dripping down my head. If I just blew that little drip at the end of my nose, I'd always get invited in. That's my little trick. But I talk about this quite regularly with people because for me, in my opinion, it should be a form of national service. Obviously, I'm being a bit facetious here,
Sure.
but the point being is what you learn about by doing a job that essentially no one wants. Let's be honest, no one wants to do this stuff.
No.
It has to teaching you humility, teaching you interpersonal interaction. And keeping your attitude, safeguarding your emotions, and moving around. That's fantastic, and it was pleasing to hear you pinpoint that as the effect it had on you later on in your career.
Yeah, it boosts your confidence, Tom, because what it does is, it's like when often, especially when I first started my coaching training business, I'd often get people saying to me, "Oh, I'm low on confidence. How do I get my confidence up?" Well, it's kind of like you can't wait for confidence to come and then go and act. It's like you can't learn to swim by reading a book. You got to get into the pool, and there has to be a first time you get into that pool. And door knocking accelerated my growth because there was a microcosm of uncertainty, a microdose of uncertainty all the way every 5 minutes when I was knocking on a new door. And so what that did for my confidence in myself, meaning that when I'd find myself in social situations or business networking events, or if I was invited to a party somewhere, it was easy to walk into a room
Mhm.
I might know Tom, Jack, and Jill out of 50 people. And that's easy because I just go and find Tom. I have a chat with you. You introduce me to other people. That's effortless. That would have been very difficult for me to do as a 19, 20, 25-year-old if I hadn't had done the door knocking, because the door knocking, it's like it teaches you social and emotional intelligence. It's a course on crack. Like it just boosts you immediately. And I did that, as I said, for 15 months. And by the way, Tom, I met some people on the doors that a couple of them, one in particular, is still friends with me today. And we're talking in the 1990s. So it's quite remarkable, really.
It is incredible, and I talk often about confidence and arrogance, which the difference between the two. I'm not going to ask you and put you on the spot with that, but you pointed it out quite nicely, actually, how you've explained it. But for those that are listening, confidence, the difference between
You can put me on the spot with any question, Tom. I'm used to it.
okay, oh, okay, I'll do it then. I'll do it then.
Yeah, yeah.
What for you? What's the
Yeah.
difference between confidence and arrogance?
So confidence is when your abilities match your talent. Arrogance is when when your abilities match your skill set, right? When my abilities are perceived to be more than what I can actually do, that's called arrogance. So in other words, it's where where my abilities exceed my opinion of, of what I can actually do. It's a simple way of answering it is it's overconfidence, and this is where then you're about to take a fall, and it's ego inflation. So, but it's that balance between what abilities do you actually have, like realistically, and what is your opinion of what you can achieve? Well, if my opinion exceeds what my abilities are, that's arrogance. If I'm walking around saying, Tom, I can make 100 grand a week door knocking, and the reality is that my ability is that I can only make 5 grand a week door knocking, I am really suffering big time from arrogance. If that makes sense.
Absolutely, and you've explained it perfectly. So, confidence, when you break it down, is Latin. Con is with, and five is faith. Okay,
Ah, nice.
so when we think of it like that, it means it's something that we've done before, so we know we can
That's
do it again.
nice.
I know I can make a nice cup of tea.
Yeah.
I'm pretty confident about it. I'm not arrogant about it because I've just made one and I can keep making it. Before I've made one, it would be arrogance. Okay.
Yes.
So it's led by action. And that talks to your point before. If you want to create confidence, you can't just manifest it. You need to do it. You
Yeah.
need to put yourself in those situations where you acquire that skill, that expertise, that exposure. And then you can be quietly confident, then more confident.
Yeah.
Then
That's really beautifully. That's beautifully defined, Tom. With faith, I love that translation. And you're right. Real confidence is riddled in reference points of experience, like you just said. The cup of tea, you've made it 5 times now. You've got these reference points that are 5 times. You can accurately say, "Hey, I've discovered that I'm actually pretty good at making this kind of coffee, this kind of tea. I've done it 5 times, 10 times." You're right. And arrogance is where I come along to you and I say, "Tom, let me tell you about how to make a cup of tea." And then you ask me, "How many cups of teas have you made?" Well, no, I haven't made any, but I know about it. And I can tell you about it. So that's another distinction, is that an arrogant person knows about stuff, whereas confidence comes from an actual knowing from experience. That's a nice distinction.
Exactly, and you're talking there into lived experience. A part of your lived experience is what made your business today. So you're
Yes,
not
spot on.
talking as the theoretical graduate.
No,
You're talking about the lived experience. I've been through this journey,
yeah.
and I've put both worlds together.
I say to my clients all the time that you need to live a couple of decades as an adult with responsibilities to A, discover who you are and what you're about, and B, to build what I would call a deep foundation of confidence. You need a couple of decades. You need to experience the pain, the joys, the mundaneness and the boringness, the whole spectrum of the emotional spectrum. You have to experience it. And before, and so that's why the word cocky and arrogance can be used in the same statement. It's like a 20-year-old. I remember when I've dealt with many 20-year-olds in my time. I'm 54. And and I'm not saying that all 20-year-olds are like this, because that is completely untrue. But the 20-year-old who's super confident is not actually confident. And I know this for a fact because I've experienced this myself, because they don't have the reference points yet. You know, there's a there's a there's a there's a new. I don't follow the cricket closely. However, every Christmas they have a big Boxing Day match in Melbourne, in Victoria, between Australia and England. And well, normally Australia and England, but this year was between Australia and India. And there was a new young kid, 19 years old, who debuted for Australia in front of 100,000 people. And his first innings, he played really. Um, uh, he didn't play like a normal player. He was hitting shots that were just created in the moment, which was just incredible. And he scored 60 runs or 50 runs or something. Very, very impressive, debut. And the way that his vibe and energy was like, his vibe and energy exceeded the path that he had been on or so far. And I remember saying to someone I was talking to about this, saying, this superb start, he doesn't know this yet, but he has made the beginning of his career a very difficult one, because he has created a reference point that is out of the box. And to repeat that with the attitude that he has around how easy that was, he's going to discover that it's not that easy, and that there's a whole complex permutations and combinations of what's going on. The pitch, the weather, the mood of the bowler, the how well the bowler's bowling, who he's facing, all that kind of stuff. And he's been dumped from the team ever since because of performance. There's nothing wrong with a man, with a kid. It's just he's just got to learn how to build that confidence by. And you said the word humble or humility, something like that, Tom.
Yep. Yep.
That's core. when it comes to building confidence is, okay, you've had a phenomenal debut, but hey, you're also going to have some ducks coming and you're going to have to deal with that too. And I think a confident person is aware that they don't let their wins get to their heads and they don't let the losses get to their hearts.
Love that.
Whereas an arrogant person suffers because they're, if I can speak plainly, full of shit. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a language we can all understand, so that's all good.
Mm.
Um, okay, all right. One of the things you start to talk about there, and you put there's a 20-year bracket on where you get to know yourself, your highs and lows and what have you. Something I would like to throw in the hat there as well, and this is important for me when I understand people, their careers, their businesses, their lives, whatever. Okay, is pattern recognition. And I think something you can probably put over that would be the cycles. You need to go through a few cycles. So it isn't just about experiencing low or experiencing high. It's doing a few of them, which are relative to certain situations, whether it be the economy, relationships, career, there's, anything really. But go through these cycles. So then you've got that pattern recognition and then you know. Then you know. And I think, the age you and I are, we can see these a mile away now.
Yes.
We can see them externally, we see them internally. Okay. And
Yes.
now we know ourselves and we can take each step with a little bit more confidence into that world of uncertainty.
Yes, spot on. Well said. Well, one of the aspects, going back to the emotional fitness framework and formula, is we look at the journey from ambition to meaning, which is the journey of those first, in your 20s and 30s and even into your 40s. Most people are in the ambition-driven world, which is the world of where we define ourselves by our material possessions and our results. There's nothing wrong with that if you're happy. And for a lot of the time, we might be happy with material possessions and the joy of bringing in results and making money. We all get to a point where we realize that that's not enough, and because we're chasing this thing called happiness, which is very transient and impermanent. It's coming and going like a wave. At one point, we move into this meaning-driven world, and the meaning-driven world is where we live a more heart-centric existence, where we begin to realize our lives have actually been about how well or not so well we've been contributing to others, and we start prioritizing legacy over results and material possessions, and you need a couple of decades to sort of get through that, and then there's integration. There's integrating ambition into meaning, where now you're making money in a meaningful way. And that's the definition of making money in a meaningful way, is where you get rewarded in reflection of the value that you are bringing. So if you don't bring value, you don't get rewarded. Whereas in the ambition-driven world, you don't necessarily have to bring value to get paid. So it's different. And I think that's that's a whole that is a whole conversation piece that can go for a while there, because that touches relationships. It touches how, because men and women traverse from the ambition to meaning driven world in different ways. It's a whole nother conversation, Tom, but you're right. And values and priorities evolve and change over time. And nothing can replace a couple of decades, because it adds to your wisdom. A 20-year-old might be full of knowledge, but wisdom comes from experience and becoming, whereas knowledge is information gathering. Two completely different baskets.
Yeah, I like that, and I also like where you said that your values are fluid; they move and what have you.
Yeah.
But what a lot of people don't know is there's different types of values. We've got the surface level values, which are affected by our immediate surroundings, but then we've got our dispositional beliefs that most of us are not connected with, and they're really deep rooted down, and those don't shift. Those we carry through life, and when we are when we tap into them, we're aware of those, okay, and we pick a vocation that suits us. Like you have a business, but it's still your career.
Yeah.
You've traversed that, and now you've plugged into your dispositional beliefs. So you're actually working in what people call a flow state or autonomy
Yes.
for that reason. But this is where people have a disconnect and they very rarely get to plug into that, and they go off their surface level values. It's always integrity, blah, 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 whatever. It's
Yeah.
always the same ones that they think are their values, but they're not necessarily.
Most people do not understand what a value actually is. So most people confuse values with morals. A moral is integrity, a moral is responsibility, a moral is respect. They're examples. A value is actually a verb, not a noun. A value is a deep desire that you realize and bring into the fruition and reality of your life. So running is a value for me because of the joy that it brings. So any activity or hobby or skill set that you're learning that actually unconditionally brings you joy, that's an expression of your values lived. I was with 30 different businesses just 2 days ago, doing this conversation for a whole day. We're facilitating conversation around all this stuff. And I said to them, so for example, in your business, if you've got a value of creativity, the question I would ask your team is, how do you do it? How do you do creativity? And if they don't know how, or they look at you blankly, then you've just got a word on the effing wall. It makes who cares? You could have, you know, tree written on there instead of creativity. It makes no difference. Out of the box thinking is another value from this other organization. Love it. How do you do it? Do they know how to do it? If you don't know how to do it, then you can't realize the value in action. And if you can't realize the value in action, it's just a concept. So morals are different. Morals are universal, engaged standards of behavior. Let's pretend, Tom, you and I have been working together for 15 years, let's say for argument's sake, and we've been, running a business together, and we've got we've got a moral compass that works together. So we've got an agreed, what does integrity mean? We've got an agreed sort of perspective on integrity, respect, responsibility. That's just a standard of behavior. Then your values and my values are going to be different and overlapping because whatever you express brings you joy is going to be different. And you're going to have aspects of that in your business as well. You're going to have aspects of the business you're going to love doing. I'm going to have aspects that I'm going to love doing that might be different to yours. And hopefully, if we're working together successfully and effectively, your skill sets and your values complement mine and we're getting shit done together really effectively. And when you have a values clash is when you've got two people whose interests are vastly different and there's a huge gap. That's a fancy way of saying I don't really relate to this guy because he's interested in all these things that I have no idea about and I don't really care about. Does that make sense?
It does, and I'd actually have I would actually call it a whinge, which would make me a whinging pom then, where I talk regularly about the integrity kitchens. I actually remember when companies didn't have values on their website, on their wall, and what have you. But when we do the business coaching, I do challenge this, as you say, and I say, where is this in your systems and process? Where's the opportunity to deliver this? How are you going to live and breathe this? And that's where it recalibrates, and that's when it becomes company wide and real. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it was interesting to hear your take on that as well.
Mm.
Listen, we've run a little bit over, so I'm going to blame you for that one
Sure.
for the conversation. But there's no reason why we can't come back and do part 2, part 3, part 10. Okay.
Absolutely.
Anybody listening to this, they want to engage with you in some capacity. What's the best method of communication for you?
Best way is to just go to Joe Pane. So the surname's pronounced Pane, by the way, Tom, which means bread in Italian. Just that's a little thing on the side. If they just go to Joe Pane, JOEPANE.com.au, there's free resources there that people can download around the topic of emotional fitness. And I also do a lot of behavioral profiling under the banner of emotional fitness. So joepane.com.au or at Joe Pane Insights is the handle for all the major socials. So Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, etc. at Joe Pane Insights.
Love it. Well, I clearly enjoyed the conversation. Thank you very much for your time, Joe.
Thanks, Tom. Much appreciated.
Hello again. I am Mr. Purple. Thanks again for watching this video. If you like my videos, if you like what we try to do here, please subscribe if you haven't done it already. The other thing that's very popular right now is the t-shirts, the Mr. Purple t-shirts. There's lots of people wearing these at the moment. You can grab yours on our website, copying this link below. So once again, thanks for listening. We love your feedback. Engage with us and speak soon.